Well, so let's start learning how to use EnvIt. It's designed to be pretty simple, but as any tool to well works, you should learn how to use the tool, the rules and the constraints to then design your workflow based on that. Just an important note first. The tutorial you are currently looking is not the final one. It's just one I did for you as early access. Okay, so which means I will show you quickly all the new feature, but I will not do a new series in depth of each EnvIt feature, especially all the features that was previously on EnvIt 1. So if you never used EnvIt before, just after look and understand this video where I will show you asset creation, USD, all the new things. If you want to go more in depth on some feature like distribution, surface and things like that, I invite you to download the EnvIt YouTube playlist tutorial link into the EnvIt product page. Okay, and you will have all those old videos. So some things are out of date, like asset creation, constraint, and things like that. But most of ground, distribution, paint mask, transform, add, subtract, and also a bit the workflow are still up to date. Okay, so I did those videos that are a bit old. There are to explain you, for example, let's say in the workflow. Okay, what is ground layer asset? Okay, so you see here asset preparation, all of that is outdated, but that the main workflow with ground layer are still up to date. Well, when you launch EnvIt into your new scene, you will notice you have access to nothing. Everything is locked. Why? Because the first thing you have to do is create a ground. So what I call a ground is a kind of EnvIt system, okay, that will initialize the scatter system. That could be a sphere, anything related to a mesh, and it's the mesh that will on which that will scatter assets. So here I will use this mountain mesh. I select it and just click on this icon to add a ground. You will have the new ground pop up. You have to give it just a name. Let's call it mountain. And a layer. Let's call that base or layer 1. It tells me a warning because this name already exists here. So if you don't want, you can call, for example, this geo or change it. Okay, now it's okay. I will wait some seconds in order that EnvIt create the system for me. Okay, now I will see here the ground system. Okay, I have my mountain. And that create for me one first layer, which is the base one. Great. If you zoom, you can also see some little dots because it's the scatter point that this sphere means it's empty because for now we don't have anything to scatter, but the scatter point are here. They will have a different scale based on your Maya scene scale size. Okay, and here in the outliner you can see you have the EnvIt system with this EnvIt icon in which all the necessary files are initialized by EnvIt. One important rule is to absolutely touch nothing inside this group. It's all the structure EnvIt need to work. If you just rename one letter of something, all the EnvIt system is broken and the script will not work on your scene anymore. Okay, so it's just for the script, so don't touch that. until I tell you it's possible. Okay, so now the last thing of the workflow is we have to load assets. So assets are now based on the Maya USD. If you're not familiar with Maya USD, I will explain you a bit how to create your own in next video. Also note that I will design for future EnvIt update a complex asset creator, but for now it's not the case. I know most of you still not know about USD and think it's something complex and complicated. It's a bit the case, but here, as anything I did, I try to simplify for you the use of it. And you will see it's just one click. You have nothing to care about USD. Just look at USD as a reference mesh, okay? Which means a mesh which is saved on your disk, but outside of the Maya scene file. Just like the classic Maya reference, okay? This is the old Maya reference where you import into your scene, but as a reference mesh and asset, okay? It's the exact same with USD, but new and modern. And not crashing, it's really robust. Great. So for you, so what we said, USD is a file external to our scene. So you can just simply load with the plus button any USD into your computer. If you know how to do it, and if you have one, just load and it will load into EnvIt. I will explain you how to create your a bit more complex USD asset later, then you will use this method to import. But for now, we will use the simpler one method, which is just pick one. A bit like in Forest Pack. You have assets, you have geometry into your scene, okay, and you want to convert it into an EnvIt asset. Okay. You just have to be careful about some setting before to start to do that. For that, you go to Setting tab and you will have Asset Creation. The first thing is to choose your renderer, and most of that, the material that is set to this asset. For example, I want to scatter this tree, and I have my AI standard because I'm working with Arnold. Okay, you choose your renderer. This way, when you will convert into USD, that will use a correct plugin converter. And last thing is to choose where to save your file. As we talked about, it's an external file. So it's not packaged and saved into the scene. So you have to say EnvIt where you want it saved your. There is the default option that it will save at the same route as my scene. So for me, it's here. I have my scene file, and it will automatically save the USD with at this patch. And you understand that if you want to save all your USD into a specific patch, you just uncheck and precise this. Okay, I will set it by default. Okay, so let's create our first asset. So I will select this tree and click pick. So that takes a bit of time. You have a loading bar, and when it's done, okay, it's scattered into my ground. So by default, that don't show you, that don't display you your full mesh. Why? Because you can choose in setting which template you want. You can set it to normal, that will show you, but I advise you to keep on a template. What is a template? It's just a proxy display at a really low poly count in order to avoid any crash, because we deal with scattering, which means you can have a lot of instance into your viewport, and if you load a 1,000,000 tree polygon, and display it immediately into viewport, that can cause some problem. So it's why by default it shows you this. Of course, here we use low poly, so we can display it. So notice I have my ground, it's okay, my layer, and in this base layer, I have my brush 001 USD created for me. You can look here, okay, the USD is saved here. Perfect. Two things you can do. You can just show and hide with this icon. And here with this icon, that don't always work. Sometimes you can help it with clicking here. When you click, it will automatically show you your asset into the outliner if you need to access it. But we will discuss that a bit later. And the most important thing about asset is you can click directly into the name to open you the asset attribute. Okay, with different attribute for your asset, of course. The first thing is the thumbnail image. Here, as we create a quick asset, you don't have any thumbnail possible. But later with EnvIt Creator, you will have a thumbnail showing you which asset it is. You have the name, the ID, and the path, okay, of the file. The viewport displays, it's what we talked about. You can choose between different default templates. You have the proxy that will not work here, that will work, but that will show you in fact the full display one. So you notice the color don't work. That don't mean that the material is not set correctly. It's just that for now Maya USD is still a bit limited, and it's just a Maya like a feature. But all three is here as a full resolution here. I can do a GPU render, and yes, all works perfectly as expected. Great. So we also have some color. Color, it's when you have multiple assets, you can just put a color to help you best identify which one is which one. Okay, so I will change the color here, and also the color of the template. Asset scale is just the scale of the asset, simply than that. But there is also the global scale. Global scale will scale all your assets. Okay, if you have 5 assets will be scaled up or down. And here you control individual asset attribute. Okay, it's a bit different. So, okay, offset is to offset into y-axis. You can click on the icon to reset by default. And probability the same. When you have different assets, you can set probability here. I will go to distribution and up the scatter amount. Okay, better. Okay, now I want to randomize the bit. So I will go to transform and check rotation, randomization. Okay, and same thing for scale with different asset scaling. Not too much. It's a bit too heavy here. Yes, okay, better. And yes, also I will up the global scale of not so much of my asset. Let's launch a render. Yes. Let's move a bit my lighting. Okay. Simply than that. Now I will add one other tree. What I want to add, let's say a yellow one. I will add this one. Okay, let's say it's yellow one. Perfect. And I want to add this big one too. Yeah, it would have been better if I rename those guys, but anyway. Okay, the big one is here. For the big one, I can change the scale a bit because it's way too big. Just the scale of this one, but you see if I go to global scale, that will change the scale of everything inside my layer. And I can choose the display. Here you see I don't want as much as big tree. I just want a few. So you can go to probability and say, okay, I just want some. Okay, just 5% of this one. Maybe 10%. Yes. Cool. It's pretty all simply than that. You just have to play with clump distribution. For example, you see the problem is the tree are not facing the sky. So for that, you have in transform the upward orient that will up to the sky. You can say, okay, I just want 20% on the ground orientation. Yes, actually, I notice Autodesk, but the GPU don't update correctly the USD. So it's a bit problematic. If you don't have correctly, be sure to switch to CPU, which will work better. Okay. Great. Okay, now let's say I want to add a river or a road. You can now in surface add a curve patch as input. So yes, let's go to curves. I will choose a busy one. Let's go in top view. Where is my okay. I will create a patch. Okay, and I want to project this patch into my mountain to be sure to well have the it's not maybe necessary, but that will help the script if the distance is correct. So yes, I better advise you to be sure to match your geometry. It's just simple. You go to curve menu. Now to edit mesh and project curve on mesh. Based on XZ plane. Okay, so not this one I will hide, but I have a new one. You see that is now projected into my mountain. Perfect. And I will add this curve as a patch. Great. So maybe I still can, with history, move the first one, and that will slide into my mountain. So it's a bit laggy for me, but that's working. Okay. And yes, nice. Now we have some option to improve that. So when you click on the name, that will select you the component. Here, that selects me the curve. If I select on the icon here, I will have the attribute radius option. That will simply allow me to set a radius distance. And with that, you can use the scale off option. You have the invert one, of course, that will invert. If I do invert inner, okay, I have inner patch. Nice. But I also want to do a scale off that will decrease the scale of the asset near to the patch to do a kind of softer transition. I have to set the value here because by default is way too low. I think yes, if I do this heavier, I want a soft transition. Nice. So you have with and without the scale of transition. That also works if you combine with invert. You can use the scale off, of course. Okay, great. So now let's look how to create shading modification. For that, I will just keep visible the first tree. So you can access all your USD are loaded here. Okay, this is the part you can touch. I have my brush, which is my tree here, with my geometry and my MLT. So yes, as it reference, in fact, if you want to do a modification or thing like that, you can close this scene. You just open the USD one and do modification that will automatically update into your main scene, which is of course extremely powerful. But you can also do modification if you want to adjust your shader directly here. You can right click into your shader and show into LookDevX. I am click on it, so as it automatically convert is not ideal. Not the best setting, but that works. Okay, if you create your own by hand, that will be of course better, but you can come here and do whatever you want into your shader. If I want, I don't know, I will just set to 0 the diffuse, so that will create kind of black tree. Yes, okay, you have access to your shader. But this is not really interesting. What is more interesting is how to do color variation. And for that, in Arnold, you would just have to just add a color jitter node. Here I have a color texture. I will put it as input and of course as output. Here you have to be careful to use the procedural value and play with. For example, I will play with min and maximum saturation. It's way sensitive, so you will see. And yes, that works as expected. That did color variation. Of course, it's heavy to show you the example, but you have luminosity with gain, hue, saturation, min max, and yes, pretty powerful. So yes, just add a color jitter for color variation. To finish, one last thing I don't talk you about is that the UI is now dockable. So of course that will not work in horizontal, that to work with as a vertical design. I can set EnvIt here. The problem is that there is an empty space here that can't be collapsed by default. So it's why I design this little arrow on the bottom bar. You just click it to switch to dockable mode, and now you will have a better UI, okay? And when you go back to floating mode, you can click on it. That will up or not the asset part in the UI.